Hello and welcome to the second Patrick Page Topit video. Now I say second Topit video because we did one before, and this one is actually a remake of the original. The reason we are redoing it is that the original was done something like 12 years ago, and the original master is beginning to show its age because it's been copied so many times. As a matter of fact, the guy who appears on that video today is much younger, so you'll enjoy him better, he says. There's a couple of other points that are different about this tape. First of all, we will explain a new style Topit vanisher, inspired by Michael Amara, young American magician. We're going to explain that to you a little later. And there's another point about this tape which is different to the original, and that is that I'm performing it before a live audience. I did it as a lecture. Now remember that I am lecturing to these people, and I'm not trying to misdirect the camera, so you may well see one of the items, or one or two of the items, going south into the Topit when you shouldn't. And if you were a live audience, you wouldn't see that happen. So allow us just a little leeway on that point. So let's have a look at Patrick Page with the Topit vanisher. I just thought that he took so long with that intro. I thought he was going to go off for a minute, you know. It took so long. We're going to talk about a thing called the Topit vanisher. And just in case there's someone here who doesn't know what the Topit vanisher is, I'll show you a couple of things with it first. And I'll explain what it is, and we'll describe all the things, not all the things, but some of the things that are possible with it. In my misspent youth, when I first came to London, I used to work all the pubs in London, and I used to actually do billiard ball manipulations in pubs, and thimbles and things like that. And I never used a shell. I never used a shell because the angles were ridiculous. You couldn't do it. So I learned just to do it all with palming. I used to produce, oh, it doesn't matter. That's my misspent youth. But one of the things I finally came up with was this idea of using billiard balls. Let's take the orange one just for laughs. So you got three balls, you turn your hand over and the orange one disappears. That was good, wasn't it? Shall I do it again just for laughs? That's right, yeah. So there's the, you just turn your hand over and the orange ball disappears. It's a timing thing. There's no skill, there's no digital dexterity, it's simply timing. There's the three balls, you turn your hand over, and you do that. That is all. There's nothing to it. It's not difficult. There it is. You do that, that. If your timing is right, you show the balls, you do that, and it's gone. So it's a question of timing. Now, if you want to really vanish that ball, you need a thing called the Topit vanisher, and the ball really disappears, as it just did. There's a red ball in this hand, there's a red ball in that hand. Will you remember? Okay. You remember which is which, this red one and that red one? Did you hear the click? I did, yeah. So it leaves you with one ball, and you take it in that hand, and you do that, and you get another click. Yeah? Now you all know what the Topit vanisher is. The Topit vanisher is a large bag that you pin underneath your jacket, and you throw things into it. I'll take my jacket off in a moment and show you and explain it all to you. But there's a technique to doing it so that it works. I've seen guys do this, and they throw it in there, and it looks like they're throwing it in. And that is the major problem. It mustn't look like you're throwing anything into your pocket at all. There's only one tiny exception to that rule, which I'll explain later. But the thing about it is that if you have a, I haven't got one in there, if you have a billiard ball and you're going to throw it under your jacket, you have to disguise the action. That action telegraphs what you're doing. So you disguise the action, so you apparently take the ball into your left hand, it's really in your right hand. I'll better explain that for the uninitiated. There it is, you take it in that hand. Now this hand's got the ball, and I'm going to throw it under there, right? But if I do that, you'll know what I'm doing. But if I say, look, there's nothing here, so it must be here, and then it disappears. So it's this action of doing that. Your fingertips brush the edge of your jacket there. So you apparently take it in the left hand, this hand comes round, oops, Can't do it in slow motion, incidentally. Can't be done in slow motion. There's the ball there. So there's nothing in this hand, so it's got to be in this hand. Now, what makes that work is that I'm actually opening the jacket fractionally, only that much. And the way to open the jacket, there's several ways. You can lean forward, except you look like a hunchback. But the easy way is you come, if you lift the, not the arm, but this is where a lot of guys make, I see guys going like this. Don't lift the arm's in that position, kick the elbow. And if you kick the elbow, the jacket will open. So if you apparently take the ball into that hand, you kick the elbow as you do that. You turn this hand over and it's gone. Understood? So far, good. Now, if you do this kind of a move, where you do that and steal it, just by doing that gets rid of the ball, which leaves you with two. So there's an orange one there and a red one there. You know, you turn your hand over. Now you do a similar action. A similar action. You show that hand. This hand swings round as we did in the first time. There it is. Orange ball, red ball. Turn your hands over. You show that one, and you show that one in the same fashion. And it's the same action. And you come back to the last ball. There's several ways of doing it. If you juggle, you can do that, and it's gone. So now you know, roughly speaking, what the Topit vanisher is and does. But there are certain rules and regulations, like you can allow the object to slide off your hand into the Topit. You can place the object in the Topit. But the one thing you mustn't do is a jerk action. There are exceptions to this rule, and we'll explain it now. I did mention that there is one action you can do where you do actually throw it in there, and that is where you, let's use it, I'll do it with the ball, where you take the ball and you throw it away. So that's where the action is, not there. So you take the ball and you apparently throw the ball away. And that applies to a coin, the same thing with a coin, where you take a coin, you've got a coin there, and you throw the coin away. So you're doing this bad action, but it's covered by your acting and the head going up, and you're apparently throwing the coin into the air. So if I did that action without all the acting involved, what it would look like is that. And you'd actually know that I was doing something with it. But if you go through all the motions of tossing the coin up, catching it, saying, look, there's a coin, throw it away, it's gone. If you take an object like a cigarette lighter or any heavyish small object, or a big heavy brass coin like that, all you got to do is that, and it will go straight into the Topit, and no one will notice it because the misdirection, the action's gone in that direction. You know, so in that instance you can do that kind of a move rather than a subtle drop into the pocket. Although the gimmick is generally known as the Topit vanisher, originally it was just called the Topit. Nowadays people seem to call it the Topit vanisher. You can actually use it for other things. One thing that I use it for quite often is a change. In other words, you exchange one object for another, and you use the Topit to get rid of the one that's gone. We'll show you a couple of things with it now, like a color-changing billiard ball. But remember, you don't have to do the things you're about to see on this tape. You can actually exchange one small object for another. It's as simple as that. One small object for another. So if you've got a point in your act where you can use that effect, use the Topit vanisher for it. Here it comes now. Now let's come to a couple of other effects as opposed to, instead of vanishing a billiard ball, just to give you an idea, you can take a red ball, roll it between your hands, and it changes to an orange ball. So you've got a color change as opposed to a vanish. How that operates is that you have the orange ball in your hand, which you get from a billiard ball clip under your jacket or wherever you like. That's the one that's on display, so you throw that up and it comes back, and this hand goes same as before, it goes straight into the Topit, and this hand comes over and rolls the orange ball, which comes up in the left hand. So two hands are moving together. That ball goes into the Topit, this ball gets rolled between the two hands. So the action again is there, You come to there, and it changes color. Okay? The same applies to if you steal this one from billiard ball clip. You've got this one on display. You can place that one on top of your fist. And as you come down, you release the orange ball into this hand. So you can now come up and do a color change that way and release the red ball into your hand. And the red ball goes into the Topit. That is getting a bit complicated, I know. But it does explain what's possible with a Topit vanisher. You can actually dump anything you like into the Topit vanisher. This is the same effect. Instead of changing the color of a billiard ball, if you steal a handkerchief from a holder under your jacket, as before, instead of a billiard ball, a handkerchief, you can take a red billiard ball and do that and change it to a handkerchief in midair. So you've got another effect. It's a change again instead of a vanish. What's coming up now is the effect that I probably use most often than any other because I do it impromptu all the time. And that is a coin vanish, a simple coin vanish with any coin. It's particularly good if you've got a large coin, and I tend to use a large Chinese coin which I carry around with me, and I use this for this particular effect. Devised by Fred Capps, shown to me many, many years ago, and you should find it useful also. Here it is, the Capps large coin vanish. To get back to the coin, Freddie Capps devised a particular vanish for a coin into a Topit, which he uses in his act. He used in his act many, many different ways. For those of you who remember him, he used to do a very big jumbo coin production, 4 or 5 coins. And in there, there was one vanish he did where he did that and dropped it into his hand. He actually had a silk on here, and he used to drop the coin into the middle of the silk and then vanish it. But it's this drop into the fingers. Instead of doing it into a silk, you used to do it into the other hand. So there to there, and then he'd do that, and the coin would disappear. So he's using the same action, this upward swing. Now, the one point I haven't made is that although you're doing an upward swing, you don't throw the thing in. You allow, if it's a ball, can you catch this for me? You allow the ball to roll off the end of your hand. And the same thing applies to a coin. If you've got a coin, you just let it slide off your hand. Can we have them back, please? That's fine. So if you're going to vanish the ball, as the hand comes round, you don't throw it in, you just let it roll off the end of your fingers. And the same applies with a coin. It's there, you apparently drop it into the left hand, this hand goes down. As it comes up to do that, you just drop it in there, and you had it click on top of the billiard ball, I'm sure. If you didn't, I did. We're going to stay with Fred Capps now for another effect. But this is an interesting point to take up here, in that Fred uses a Topit in his tails, which is old-fashioned and classic and has been used many, many times before. But Fred uses it in a way which is unexpected for this effect, which is the vanishing cane in newspaper. He doesn't get rid of the cane in the Topit. You'll see exactly what he does now. Other effects. Vanishing walking stick. Hands up all those who have done the vanishing cane, one way or another. Yeah, everybody's done it at one time or another. There's many variations on the theme, many different ways of doing it. This is the old-fashioned, it's become standard, and it was invented by 2 people at one and the same time. Bobby Baxter, a young comedy magician in America, and in this country, Robert Harbin. Both of them came up with the idea of rolling, the cane was already in existence, changing into 2 handkerchiefs, but both of them independently came up with the idea of rolling the walking stick up inside a newspaper and then unrolling the newspaper to show it vanish. Well, it's collapsed by now, and I've got it in this hand. The problem is, what do you do with it? Well, normally there are many ways of getting rid of it, dump it in your pocket, but if you're wearing a Topit, then all you have to do is let this. Now, by holding my hand up, this jacket is partially open. So all I've got to do is let the paper unroll, and as it unrolls, behind the paper you just put, you don't drop, you put the walking stick and the knob inside the pocket, fold the paper up, and you got the vanishing cane trick. Now, having said that, we'll come back to Fred Capps again, because Fred Capps had a vanish. He used to do this vanishing the cane in a newspaper, but he added a little bit to it, which used the Topit. Let's do that trick again, so you will know exactly what's happening. We roll the cane up inside the newspaper as before, but Fred used a salt cellar, which he had in his trouser pocket. I'll put it in my jacket pocket. And what Fred did was, he rolled the cane up in the paper as before, but this time when he stole the cane, he didn't put the cane into the Topit. What he did was, there's the cane, he lets it as he pushes it back in, he lets it collapse into his hand as before, turns it over, went into his pocket and got rid of the cane and the knob at the same time, and came out with a salt cellar. And he sprinkled salt all the way across it like that, and then he threw the salt cellar away and did that, which is a nice, pretty sequence. Yeah? The only difference is that Freddie used to wear tails, and he vanished the salt cellar in his tails. But it was an interesting thought that prior to that, he used to vanish the cane in the newspaper. He used to steal it, vanish it, and as he unrolled the paper, he used to drop the cane and the knob into his tails. And he came up with this idea of stealing the cane out, going into his pocket for the salt cellar, and getting rid of the cane then. And he had another effect. He vanished the salt cellar. And I can see him as if it was yesterday, that when he had the paper all rolled up and he sprinkled the salt like that, and he went, and he always did that with his fingers, and then he unrolled the paper to show the cane had vanished. So that's another way of using the Topit. And that particular way gives you a nice little sequence in an act as well. I did mention earlier a new style Topit vanisher based on the Michael Amar model. Well, Michael's was designed to be built into a suit. We've come up with a slightly simplified version, which is a portable version, and we have one here for you now. Well, this is what it looks like, and it's similar to the original in that it is a big bag with a pocket here. So things that are thrown into it will land in the pocket. There's a couple of slight differences. One of them is that the back is taller, it's longer at the back there, so that things won't fly over the top of it. And this is the Michael Amar feature, which is a flap. Instead of pinning it to your pants, that flap just tucks into your waistband. And it's also portable in that you can transfer it from suit to suit. On the back here, instead of using the old-fashioned system that I use, where you pin it to the inside of your jacket, these safety pins, you pin them to the inside of your jacket and they have Velcro on them, and you attach the Topit to it. And you actually get a spare set of pins, so you can have a set of pins in two jackets and just transfer the Topit from one to the other. And it's a much more practical situation with this flap. And there's also a cutaway at the front here, so that the front edge of the Topit won't peek through the edge of your jacket if the jacket opens. But that is the Topit vanisher. And the reason it's grey is so you can see it. It should actually be black. If you're wearing a black lining and you're wearing black trousers, a black waistcoat, if this is black, no one will ever get a flash of it under your jacket. I've done it in grey so you can see what it is. And there's 4 safety pins along the top, and there's the pocket. The front edge is lower than the back, and there's 1 little safety pin on that edge. And the reason for that is that when you've got the jacket on, the Topit's pinned in position, that 1 little safety pin there, you pin it to your pants. The reason for pinning that front edge to your trousers is that when you raise this elbow, the jacket will open, and because the front edge is pinned to your pants, the pocket will open there. It's difficult to explain this, but it's flat against my body. If I do that, the jacket moves away and opens the pocket. So anything that you have in your hand that you throw under there is going to land in the pocket. It's not difficult. It's not difficult. The modern versions, based on the Michael Lamar one, are like this. If you imagine that that is the back and this is the front, which is also lower, the difference being that this big flap here you tuck into your waistband, which is a very, very clever idea. You never get hooked up, you can move around and it will give and take. So it's much better than the safety pin idea that I use. And also, it's a deeper one and it goes further back and things can drop into it. Whilst we're talking about that, Gus Davenport, once upon a time, had a Topit vanisher which tapered to a point at the back. So anything, and we're really talking about billiard balls now, when he threw a billiard ball into the Topit, because it was tapered to a point at the back, the billiard ball landed right back in that corner. You understand that? But in that corner was a hole with an elastic ring built into a hem, which meant that he had a billiard ball dropper. The old-fashioned billiard ball droppers, which were cloth tubes with an elastic round the mouth, you squeezed them out. Well, Gus used to vanish a billiard ball in the Topit, and all he had to do was go there and squeeze, and he got it back again. You know, so he could reproduce it behind his knee and do another move or whatever. George Blake from Leeds, who certainly in the mid-50s showed me this idea of going into your pocket and bringing things out. And what it was a slit right through your pocket into the Topit. It's a so-called modern idea. Believe me, George Blake came up with it in the 30s. He explained it to me in the 50s, but he came up with it in the 30s, where you reach into your pocket and go straight into the top, which means that you could vanish something like that, and people say, where has it gone? You reach in your pocket and give it to them. And you just reach straight into the top and get it. That was George Blake's idea, although several people have invented it in more recent, or reinvented it in more recent years. So now you know what the Topit looks like, and you understand that anything you throw under your jacket will land in that pocket, okay? We have already mentioned exchanging one object for another, like in a color-changing billiard ball or a billiard ball changing to a handkerchief. What we're going to show you now is the same thing, the same movement, the same action, the same effect. The difference being it's a switch of a deck of cards. The important thing about this is that the audience are not aware of the fact that the object has been exchanged. So you can exchange one normal deck of cards for a trick deck. Have a look at it now. Let's take playing cards, please. Now, a playing card is a difficult thing to vanish into a Topit because it's very light. And one of the interesting things about Topit is that any object that's got a little bit of weight to it, you throw it under your jacket. If it's heavy, if it hits your body, it will bounce off your body and carry on. But if it's lightweight, like a sponge ball or a silk handkerchief or a playing card, if it touches your body, it will instantly drop. So you want something with just a little bit of weight to it. So a deck of cards is fine. Let's imagine for a moment that imagine that these are two decks of cards, okay? So this is the one that we're using. This one's in my pocket, and whenever I want to, I get hold of it in my hand. I'm holding it in my hand now. You don't palm it, you just hold it in your hand with your thumb all down one side, so that from the front, if your hand's against your body, no one will see that deck of cards. So he's got the deck, shuffle it, give him a good mix up. So he mixes the cards up, and once he's shuffled them, I take them, I come across here, and I've switched decks. So this can be a normal, that is a normal deck. This could be Devano's Rising cards or a stacked deck or whatever you like. And it's the same as the billiard ball switch earlier on. This hand takes the cards, and the action is that both hands come up like this. So sorry, you don't have to keep reaching for it. This one comes straight into the top. You just throw it straight into the top, but at the same time, you fan this one out. And if one drops on the floor, it could have come from this deck. I say that because one just dropped on the floor. And I'm no fool. So you can actually switch a deck. If you want to vanish a deck, this was a thing George Davenport used to do, which I'll come to in a moment. George Davenport used to have a card selected, returned to the deck, and you go, and he'd turn the deck over and say, is that your card? And it would be their card on the bottom of the deck. Right? He'd bring it to the bottom and say, there's your card on the bottom of the deck. So I'm going to make your card vanish from the bottom of the deck. The action is there, you go like that. Now, no. One card may slip, but it is always the bottom card, which is a selected card. So the line is, I'm going to vanish your card, but in fact the deck vanishes and leaves his card behind. Now, let me explain that again. In that particular vanish, the possibility is that one card only might slip out. If you do it right, there's a possibility, because you're hanging onto the deck, there's a possibility that one card only will pop out. I put this in a book somewhere, but there's a possibility, but it's always that card. Now we come to an idea which I never fully developed, and I wish I had, and that is the egg bag. The point about this egg bag idea was that the bag was ungimmicked, so that you could apparently drop an egg into a bag, hand it to someone, they reached in to take the egg out, and the egg had vanished. That is a good basic idea and capable of variation and development. I never got round to it. I did it a couple of times on kid shows, and that was it. But whilst we're talking about it, another idea I had with the same prop was, instead of using a plaid egg bag, type bag, the idea was to have a green felt bag and use a golf ball. So you had the green and the golf ball, and you did an egg bag type routine with the golf ball in a green bag. But it had a payoff, and that is that you reached into the bag at the end and pulled out the flagpole, which was in fact an appearing cane painted black and white with a red flag hanging at the top of it. Again, I never developed it, but the idea is there, and the basic idea is about to be shown to you now. Yeah. No, this was only an idea. I did it twice, I think, on kid shows, like many years ago. The idea of doing an egg bag routine with a normal bag, so that you can take the egg, put it in the bag, hand it to them, and they can open the bag out and do what they like, and it's a perfectly normal bag. It was only a weird idea, which I thought I'd throw in. Okay, now we come to something which I consider to be really important with the Topit Vanisher. And this is an idea that is 100% practical for almost any magic act. If you've got an act where you have a small object that you want to vanish theatrically, this is for you. It's an old idea, using a cloth with a cardboard disc sewn in the middle for a glass, like the old-fashioned one. Anyway, let's get on to it, and you'll see actually what happens with this cloth. Now, a totally different approach to vanishing. Make sure I've got nothing in here so that the next item won't bang against it. I'm sure most of you are familiar with the idea of having a handkerchief with a round disc sewn into the middle of it, so that you put it over a wine glass and you pick the wine glass up and drop the wine glass into a well. All familiar with that? Well, if you've got there isn't a disc in the middle of this handkerchief, so you will have to imagine that there is. But if you have a glass and you have a disc to match the top of the glass, what happens is that you drape the handkerchief over your arm, you take the glass and take hold of the disc and do that, and the glass disappears. And in fact, you don't really need a disc, as you've just seen. But if you want to be a perfectionist, then sew a disc into the middle of the handkerchief. And that's very easy to do, and it's a very practical vanish. Edward Victor, many years ago, used to do a glass of milk vanish and reproduction in a top hat in his act. And one of the things he did at one point was he took out a handkerchief, put it over his arm, took the glass of milk under the handkerchief, did that. And the action is so simple, and well covered and easy. Sideways on, you drape the handkerchief over your arm, you pick up the glass, you do that, and the glass disappears. So it's another method. Go on, you can applaud. It's okay. It's okay. And whether you realize it or not, you've just seen one of the most practical vanishes of a small object that you're ever going to see. And the same applies to a deck of cards in the box or out. If you've got a shape in the handkerchief to match your deck of cards, you take the deck of cards, do that, shake it out, it vanishes. That can apply to anything. Any small object that you want to vanish and you're afraid to throw it into the Topit, do that, put it in the Topit, and apparently take hold of it underneath the handkerchief. And as I say, that's a very, very practical thing to do for anyone who goes out and performs magic for the public. Yeah. Go on, I'll wait. Just for the record, I wrote a small book called The Topit Handbook, which was published in 1966. Which is a long time ago, isn't it? Yeah. Nearly 30 years ago, isn't it? Yeah. Published by L. Davenport and Company, and still available from them. I recommend that you buy it because there's quite a number of tricks in there that I haven't explained here tonight. And it mentions several tricks that were devised by the late George Davenport, who was the expert on Topit. He did about half a dozen tricks perfectly, without any question of a doubt, and he's the one who inspired all of us to try and use Topit. So I recommend you buy the book. If you can't get it from Davenport's, ask Victor. Oh, it's out of print, is it?
Did you ever see George do the vanish with a glass of liquid?
Oh, yes, yes. Oh, no, not a glass of liquid, no. No, a glass of rice.
No, a glass of liquid.
Yeah, no, but...
He said he had a waterproof Topit.
Well, I built one of them as well. I mean, I think everyone who ever played with Topit, we were just talking about it the other day. I had one as well, a waterproof one, but it wasn't a practical thing to do. You know. But I'll tell you, you've just reminded me of something I used to do all the time. Now we come to a vanish of a glass that I used to do in pubs all the time. It's a practical thing to do, but not for an audience. You don't actually perform this for an audience. On the tape, you'll see me doing it in front of a crowd of people, of course. But when you perform it in a bar, you're doing it for 1, 2, or 3 people standing around in a bar. That is important. On this take that you're about to see, you'll hear quite a little bit of laughter and hilarity, and when the glass vanishes, you hear a yell. And the reason for all of that is that that was the second take. The first take, I missed the Topit completely and the glass smashed on the floor. That's why they're laughing. Here it is, the pub glass vanish. And this is a trick, an effect that I used to do all the time in pubs, when I was working in pubs, you know. And it's a situation, it actually, you need a half-pint tumbler or a pint tumbler, which is what makes it more effective, because it's big, you know, and you're standing, no, see, this is an impromptu thing, it's not a set-up thing, so we're all standing around in the bar, and you get the glass empty, you see. You ever seen anyone stick a beer glass to the ceiling?
Never.
Would you like to see it?
Yeah.
You don't believe it, do you? He doesn't believe I can do it. Well, I'll tell you what, point to the ceiling, wherever you want it to go. Look, there it is.
Do you have to use a special sized glass for this?
Yes. Very important, no, very important. It's got to be a reasonable sized glass with a reasonable amount of weight, you know, so you know where it's going and you feel it. And it works every time. Look, he's looking as well. Thank you, Bobby, thank you very much. Yeah. Are there any questions about...
How much of the glass? Any glass?
Well, we've actually come to the end of the Topit demonstration. Are there any questions, seriously, about anything that we did earlier on, perhaps?
Who invented the Topit?
Who invented the Topit? It was invented by a man called Harold Comden, whom I met, actually. Oh, yes, he came into Davenport's twice. He was an old man and he was living in an old folks' home in Paddington called something like Tall Trees or something Trees. He was living in an old folks' home there, and he came and I got him to autograph 2 of the books. No, he was shorter than me. I would say he was probably about the same height as me, but when I knew him, he was old and he was stooped a little, so he looked shorter than me. It made me feel big. No, he didn't do it for me, and I gave him a thumb tip. He wanted a thumb tip. I didn't even sell it to him. I gave it to him out of the kindness of my heart. I got him to autograph 2 of the books, the Topit handbook, that is, and one of them I kept, and I still have it at home, and the other one I sent to J. Marshall, who, when he got it, opened it, saw Topit book, put it into stock. He thought we'd sent him one short, and he didn't open it to see the signature. And when I told him, he went raving mad, you know, because Jay's big thing was having books that were autographed to him by the author. Well, this time it was autographed to him both by the author and by the inventor of the effect, who, just as a matter of interest, told me that he got the idea from shoplifters having big pockets under their jackets to dump stuff into. That's where he got the idea of having a big pocket there, and he threw things in and he could make them disappear.
His was the pin-on, the same thing.
Exactly the same, the old-fashioned pin-on one. It was just a big bag that he pinned under his jacket.
And then George developed it even more.
And then George Davenport cottoned onto it and became the world's leading expert at it. And to my mind, still no one's sort of surpassed him. Pardon?
I can remember him doing it.
Yeah, well, we all remember him doing it. You know, he was expert. That is the story of Topit. Thank you.